That was stupid, but hey, it was something. Husband is making dinner. Hey! Hey! He's only going to do it once. So hello, and welcome to domytriesthis. I hope you brought your cuppa. Today's coffee mug is a color-changing mug for Star Wars. It says, "May the Force be with you." As you can see, there are pictures all around it right now. But when it is not filled with hot tea, the lettering shows the picture that's in the background there. So this Y would have that yellow in there. But the actual background around the lettering is black. So this one turned like almost right away. It is a really neat coffee mug. My husband's trying to claim it. He can't have it. I might try to find him another one on Amazon. I think this particular company is on Amazon. Anyway, so in our coffee mug is a tea from a Sips By box you guys didn't get to see me open. And from that box, the September box from Sips By, this is from the Mountain Inspired Tea Blends Golden Glow. It says on here, beauty and skin. Serenitea is actually the name of the tea. It says Serenitea. This was a chunky tea. It has a little thing so you can see it on the inside. Let me get the card real quick. I have the card because we didn't get to read all of these and do all the stuff. This one is Serenitea. No. Where are you? Golden Glow. Sips by Rocky Mountain Serenitea. This has ginger, turmeric root, carrot pieces, beet pieces, pineapple pieces, calendula petals, and natural flavors. And it says Golden Glow beams in your cup from the aromatic turmeric and a softly sweet finish. It's actually pink in the mug. It says steep 3 to 5 minutes. So actually, technically, by this time, this should be fairly close to full flavor, which is good because this being a dragon bite, as we all know, the tea doesn't get as long to steep. Let's go ahead and we will give her a sip and we will get started. Not getting much of a sip. Still hot. This is a very subtle tea. Interesting. I'm not getting distinct flavors. That might be the turmeric. But I don't dislike it. I don't dislike it. We'll go with that right now. I'm not really getting... Most teas you get a flavor, and I'm not really getting a flavor. They're right, there is a nice sweetness to it, especially on the end of this end of the sip. But beyond that, there is not. I'm not getting a whole lot of ginger, which is really interesting since ginger is the first ingredient. And it is just it's very mellow. It's very mellow. Alrighty, so anyway, today we are doing a dragon bite, and we are continuing. Yuriko had to get her 2 cents in, her 2 jingles in. Today we're doing a dragon bite, and we are continuing on the genealogy, spiritual journey, that thing. Today we're going to be discussing specifically Ancestry.com and how I've been working with it, the help that I've gotten to work with it, and some tips about it. I'm not an experienced user by any means. I've only been doing this for a couple of months at most, and so I'm sure there are others that have more tips and more information on how to use it better than what I have. I'm just sharing what I have learned in the short time that I have worked with it. And I am very thankful that you can actually delete branches and rebuild, because, yeah, there have been a few mistakes on the way, as you'll find out. And while we discuss all that ancestry stuff, we will be working on this look. Let's go ahead and do this really quickly. We'll show it to you again at the end as usual. Yeah, so if you're interested in this look, you're interested in more about Ancestry.com and how I've worked with it and how I figured out how I've built my tree and what tips I have for it, then just keep on watching. I don't usually mention the palettes that I'm going to use. However, these two were requested by Melissa, and that is the Nomad American Parks, which looks like that, and the Nomad Land Elds and Ice. No, that's Fire and Ice. It looks funny. It's Elds, so it's got to be in Icelandic. So this is the Iceland Fire and Ice palette, also by Nomad. I fumbled around with the name. So we're going to be using those. And I'm also adding in the Lunar Magic Goddess. Right there. All three of these are still available. You should be able to find them easily. One other note. I've been having some issues with my skin, so we're already starting to fall apart a little bit. We'll see how well it goes, right? Right. Kind of have an idea of where I'm going. As usual, it's just kind of an idea. But let's go ahead and get started, and we will start talking about the things. So I'm going to be talking about my process at Ancestry, which it turns out it is not as easy as it would seem. The first rule of Ancestry.com is don't accept everything you get at Ancestry.com. There's a lot of people playing with the, in Ancestry, and a lot of what other people put up ends up coming in as hints for you and for your ancestors and tree, and not everybody is paying attention to dates or to things that make no sense or anything like that. They just throw anything up there, and if you're not paying attention, you can end up with your tree kind of a mess. Trust me, I've done it. On my mother's side, I put in some people, and I ended up putting them in twice without realizing I was putting them in twice in two different places, and they ended up with 4 birth parents. This is not possible. And it is a process. You're going to have to be patient. Some of them are more of a process than others, let me tell you. The Puerto Rican side of my family is just like, wow. A lot of that has to do with the names, and a lot of times people were named the same name, the way they put together their last names for their kids, whether or not the kids keep their last names the way they were, stuff like that. It's amazing. It's astonishing. You do have to be careful and watch for dates and stuff like that. We just had, and I say we because I had to have a lot of help searching into this, and we are still not sure if we're done. But we just had a whole big mess with a bunch of Carmens in my tree. One of my great uncles, granduncles, however you term it, apparently married 2 different Carmens, and there was possibly a third Carmen, and one of the Carmens married somebody else who was possibly the son of a Carmen. Yeah, you got to keep an eye on these things. It is nuts. It's nuts. We'll just go with it's nuts. So there has to be a process, and you just can't accept stuff. Basically, I got into Ancestry. I did indeed confirm the half-brother that I believe I discussed that got me into it initially, to confirm that he was my brother. I did confirm that he was my brother, and honestly, finding stuff on that side of the tree has been fairly easy at least until you get back to where they're in Scotland or England. Ancestry has at least 2, possibly 3 different levels of membership, and I'm on the basic, which means it's really hard to get anything from overseas. To do the overseas stuff, I actually have to do their world, which is I pay about 25 right now, and the world is like 40, and I'm not ready to do that yet. I may have to eventually, but I'm not ready to do that yet. That's a lot of money. But I was having problems with my dad's side. And a lot of that has to do with the marriage customs. A lot of time there's intermarrying within the same community. And so there's name issues, and like I noted, there's date issues. There's just all kinds of things that can make it difficult. And I didn't actually work on it very long, to be honest, but I was getting very frustrated in those first few weeks, or that first week or so. And somebody pointed out a group called DNA Angels. You can find them on Facebook. You need to go to the screening room first if you're ever interested in using their services. They will then get a hold of you and ask you some questions and determine whether or not they're going to take your case. Now, the initial part is just to find, your parents or some bit of family, and that part is free. It's always nice to donate. I've already donated a little bit. I intend to donate more because this has been an amazing experience for me. And I'll be sharing more of that in a future Dragon Bite, because really it's been amazing. But you do have to go to their screening room first and then get accepted before they will take your case and do anything. After that, they have someone go in there and start working on your tree. You have to give them permissions to get into your tree and all of that. And so we did that, and she started finding stuff within the first 24 hours. It astonished me because I struggled. And a lot of that struggle had to do with the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, right? But she was finding stuff right away, and we did have a few puzzles, and I had a few things to help. I had a birth certificate. It was a photocopy of my original birth certificate, which apparently got redone, but that's a whole different story. They in Puerto Rico, they did something with the birth certificates, and I had to have, they redid the birth certificate, and they made it available, I guess, to the public, I guess. But I didn't know that at the time, so all I had was this old photocopy that my mother had given me. But I was able to share that, and we did have a couple of puzzles. For example, we had a child that had been born to my father, but the mother that was mentioned, first of all, would have been like 12 years old when she had the child. And secondly, it said she was his wife, and that would have been during the time period my mother was his wife. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff you run into, and we had to track all that down and sort it out. And we got help from a cousin that we found. Thank goodness. Appreciate the cousins. Love the cousins. So we had to do all of that, but she did a lot of the work, and I paid attention to what she did, and I asked questions, and I practiced on my mother's side before she hit the end of what the angels were going to do, and I was on my own. I wanted to make sure that I had her there, so to speak, to help me figure out the areas where I struggled, so I could figure out how to sort things out, so to speak. What sources do you accept? Where do you look for confirmation? All of that stuff. She spent about, I don't know, 2 weeks, a week and a half, something like that, on my tree. Now they have tons of cases, and that's why they don't stick around that long. That's why they only do part of what they do, part of your case. They do have a option where they will focus more solely or do more, but it's a paid service. So on the free service, they're just, they're only going to go so far. And I wanted to be sure that I was ready to do it on my own, mostly, when she got so far. And she connected me to one of my cousins who connected me to other cousins and a sister. We will get more into that in another one. But those cousins and that sister have helped sort out a few of the issues that we were looking at, like that child I was talking about. That child had died at birth, apparently, or shortly after birth, and was my mom's. And for some reason, that child was buried with my father and his second wife, I believe. But those were some of the things, issues that we had to sort out. And that's why I'm talking about how I use Ancestry and my tips for going through it. And like I said, the first one is, the first tip from anybody on Ancestry is don't accept everything that Ancestry tells you. Because like I said, everybody is on there. They're all doing the things. One of the first things you really need to pay attention to when you're working with the stuff on Ancestry is dates. Because you will have a whole bunch of stuff in there that makes no sense. The Carmen situation I was talking about. For some reason, the first and second wife of this grand uncle were given the same marriage date. They have different last names. One of them is more convoluted than the other. But it's one of those things where they were both supposedly married to him in 1920. And that was just not possible. By talking to a cousin who called one of those two Carmens her grandmother, I was able to figure out that one of them was 1920, the other one was in the 1930s, like 1930 or 1931, somewhere in there. So you got to pay attention to dates. You've got to look at what you're adding, because you will end up with people being polygamous when they weren't. They weren't. That's the first thing. Second thing is to look at sources. The last thing I ever look at when I'm working with the Ancestry files, they have one where they will say, this is from members' trees. And there can be good information in there, in those trees, that can direct you to some information that you don't have. But they're the last thing I will look at. I will and see how my information and their information jives. Now, if it doesn't jive, that doesn't mean that I need to change my information. Like I said, there is a lot of stuff in there that is just, people just accept. And you can't do that in Ancestry, unfortunately. So I will look at those last. I will look at the dates on things. There, a lot of times you'll find names spelled differently. If you can, like I have someone who's named Olmo. Somewhere else he's listed as Ilmo, with an I instead of an O at the beginning. So you have to look at those, and if you can, you need to try to look at the documents. A lot of those documents are digitized now, so you can look at the documents and say, oh, well, that is Ilmo. Or you could look at the documents and see how possibly that got mistranscribed, how somebody would look at how it was written and go, oh yeah, maybe this could be this person, and I could see why the name is different. But for me, for a lot of them where the names are different, so there's 3 categories of hints. There's new hints, ignored, and accepted. And so when you look at a hint, you can click, no, that this is not them, or maybe this is them, and those hints will go into ignored. First, you try to go and see if you can see the document. Read the document for yourself. That's the first thing you want to attempt to do. Now, some of these documents that you want to try to read are not on Ancestry, or they're from questionable sources to begin with. So I tend to also, if I can't find the document on Ancestry, if I can't find a reasonable citation, I go to another site, and that's Family Search, I think it's .org, and it is run by the Mormons, who are obsessed, obsessed with documenting genealogy. If I can't find the document on Ancestry, I go there looking for documents, looking for backup and verification. Sometimes I do that anyway. Like for these Carmens, I had to do that. Because here was the weird thing about the Carmens. I could only find a marriage certificate for one of them. But there were 4. Now, one of them, to be fair, I haven't really looked into too much, because she's possibly the parent of a person that's not a direct concern for me. Possibly. But the 2 wives of Jose, the person that had 2 Carmen wives, only had one civil registration or marriage certificate, marriage registration. Now, the good news with it is if you screw up, you can delete a branch and start over, and I have done that several times because something didn't make sense and I needed to see it better or pay closer attention. I had to do that with the people who had 4 parents. And honestly, most of the stuff that I have worked with has been a lot less thorny than that particular knot, the Carmen knot. Another thing that I try to do is I try to focus on just 1 or 2 branches at a time. And I try to stay on that one site before I move off. But if it gets too thorny, like my Carmen's, sometimes you do have to move on. And I keep track. I'm going to show you guys this. I keep track in on my little, this is the Color Note app, and I keep track on here. First of all, I have ignored hints to work on, paused because there were no current matches. I try not to run down rabbit holes where I don't have a current match, because Ancestry DNA will give you a list of matches that match your genetic profile from what they've done for your DNA. And if I don't have a match down a particular thread, that's a lot of work for nothing. I'll sometimes do it to practice because I'm still working on how the whole thing works out. But in general, kind of ignore those branches if they don't have a current match. I have finished working a branch ends, meaning that there's no kids or I can't find records or whatever. Reworking, checking, or fixing a mess. I had a few of those to start with. And then I have a star that says leads to a match. And then I have check original records, census, military, obituary wills, and grade. And I try to do it in that order pretty much. I'm mostly looking for records. The census is useful to a degree. But when I'm checking census, I usually go for the latest one. I very rarely use the earliest one, although I should, I guess. Double check locations, double check dates. And then here I have branches I'm working on to help me keep on track. So you can see that I'm working on like 3 of Dad's branches and I've got 1 of Mom's. And that helps keep me focused. And then I have a list of stuff that I want to come back to. Somehow it got confusing or something didn't make sense or something. So things that I want to come back to. I have a few that I'm ignoring for whatever reason. And then I have a list of branches that I've already worked and pretty much have reached the end of for me. So I use this to really help keep track of what I'm doing. One of the things that I was trying to get to is that the thing in Puerto Rico, one of the reasons it's so confusing is endogamy. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And that's the custom of marrying only within the limits of a local community, clan, or tribe. And that's what's causing a lot of the issues of finding people. There are a lot of caballeros. Not all of them are necessarily related to me, but there was a lot of intermarrying anyway, if you know what I'm saying. And that's part of the Carmen problem. And apparently there are certain names that can be considered family names. So you might run into a lot of one name for a family. So that was a quick rundown on using the using Color Note to help you keep track of things, making sure to verify your sources is very important, which is why I use the family search. And even then, I'm still cautious. I have sometimes had 4 or 5 windows open as I try to verify everybody that's coming up on a list as related or part of a particular part of the family. You've got to be very careful. And be willing to, like I said, be willing to and ready to delete a whole line and redo it. There's just so many mistakes that are I guess a part of the whole ancestry thing, unfortunately. I try to verify with at least one source. A lot of people say that they won't do it, add something unless they get 2 sources. Well, quite obviously with a few things, with some of the issues I've had, that's not happening. I'm not going to get 2 sources of anything. So for a lot of them. Others I do get 2 sources. You know, I get confirmations of birth dates. I get confirmations of burials. Sometimes I have somebody who's probably dead, but I cannot find a death record for him in a branch that I'm working right now. And so you can get some things, you can get confirmations. You can get confirmations of children by looking at more than one census. But the big thing is to definitely try to verify your sources if you can. You need to work slowly and patiently because you are going to make mistakes. You are going to have things that need to be fixed. And you're going to have to rework stuff. You're going to have to double check stuff, all of that. It is frustrating, but at the same time, it is very enjoyable. It's rewarding. I wouldn't necessarily say it's enjoyable in the terms of, hey, I'm going down a water slide and having a good time, enjoyable. But it's rewarding because you can meet and find family. And if you're lucky, when you contact them, they will respond. Now, that's one thing, though, I wouldn't hold my breath on too much. The cousin my angel found for me, Tara was amazing and very helpful. And she's still very helpful when she can be. She's a little busy. She does a lot. She's one of the few that takes Puerto Rican cases because of that endogamy. That I'm probably pronouncing entirely wrong. She had taken me to a cousin that I had actually attempted to message previously. He hadn't responded to me at first. He knew about me, but he knew about me. He knew, apparently my father, contrary to what my mother tried to tell me, did remember me. He did want me. He always wondered where I was. Through that cousin, I got to meet other cousins, and we managed to expand the tree enough to getting beyond the one cousin and onto other cousins, and we'll be talking more about that in the future. But she had to help me get there, and then I had to reach out more than once. So a lot of times I have found that people will not respond. Now, there's a number of reasons for that, I'm sure. A lot of people don't, they have a story they tell themselves in their head. And if you don't fit in it, they don't want you, they're not going to respond. to you because you don't fit that story in their head. Some of them just may, like my family, just question the veracity of it. Others may have only gotten on there to confirm ethnicity. So they may not be checking their thing. They may not be building a tree. There's a lot of people on my DNA matches list that have no trees. And there's a lot with trees that I don't have common ancestors with, which is another suggestion I would make, but we'll get there in a minute. So there's going to be a lot less when you trying to find people and you start trying to contact people. There's going to be not as many are going to respond as you would hope. Let's just put it that way. Because a lot of them are not on there to find family. And a lot of them have gone in and they've made it like a half-hearted tree, I guess. And then they've stopped working on their tree. There's people that are on my list that haven't signed into their accounts for, 6 months to a year. So things happen. And I think right now I'm running about maybe a third, maybe a quarter of them are actually responding when I message. Whether you contact them or not, the easiest way to get started is to start with the DNA matches that have a common ancestor. And there will be a point where it's really hard to get to the match on your list, because basically Ancestry hides living persons on trees unless the owner of the tree gives you permission to see living persons. When I invite people, I always give them permission to see living persons, so that they can figure out where they need to go, or they can make a comment on something and say that that's not where that person belongs or whatever. I always try to make it so that they can see what's going on my tree, but not everybody's going to do that. So like I said, the easiest way to get started with filling out your tree is to start with those that have a common ancestor, because you will have trees in there that are unlinked without a common that don't have a common ancestor, and you may eventually figure out where they fit in. But without that common ancestor, it's really difficult to get to people. I don't think I've reached somebody without a common ancestor yet. I've tried on a couple, but you look at names and you kind of try to figure out where they would fit. But without that common ancestor, it's hard to tell if that's actually where they fit. So, and then the other thing that I did, now Tara did it differently, a little differently. She had, she broke my father's family up into 3 lines. So there was a D1, D2, D3. What I've done is I've gone for some of those common ancestors. I've used those as you can categorize. So I've used those as categories. I have a category for Acosta, who seems to be a big nexus on my tree. A lot of my matches come from Acosta. There is also Caballero, and there's Rivera, and there's a few others. So I've given each of those, and they each have a color marking. But that makes it so that you can say, I'm going to work on the Caballeros today. You go to your DNA matches, and you can choose the group. So Caballero, the group, and it'll show me everybody who I've put in the Caballero group who is somehow linked to me through a Caballero. Makes it a little easier that way too, is if you're just working on specific lines and you're working on specific people and parts of the branches. That way you're not scattered all over the place, because it's real easy in Ancestry to go down the rabbit holes. There's a lot of rabbit holes, so it's really easy to get to be working on one person and end up way over somewhere else. Way over somewhere else. Trust me, way over somewhere else. I have gone down so many rabbit holes. That's why I had to do the color note thing, because seriously, a lot of rabbit holes. You will get distracted. So that is another tip, is to categorize your people in some way that makes it easier for you. Either by using last names, or if you can figure it out, genetic lines like she did, last names like I did. Some sort of category that works for you. That's one thing that I've done, is to categorize it, and then I use those categories to help me with what I'm working on that day. I have gone down, now when you're categorizing, you're not going to want to categorize everybody. You start getting down into the, where they share maybe, I don't know, 50 CMs with you. CMs is what has to do with the category, with how much DNA they share with you. When you get down to 50 CMs, that's actually not a lot. The closer links are going to have higher CMs, like brothers and half brothers are going to be in the thousands. Stuff like that. So there's a point where, they will, apparently Ancestry goes down to 15, but 15, you got to have a cutoff somewhere. I'm taking mine down to 57 in categorizing, but I don't know if I will actually search all those out, because honestly, like I said, once you get that far down, you're looking at 8th, 9th, and 10th cousins and beyond. And that's really not a huge match, and may not be worth all the effort to do all that, All right, so it's 50 CMs. Start with common ancestors. Create groups that help reduce what you're looking at, because you see all those matches, and the matches is in the hundreds. Seriously. So yeah, you want to categorize so that you're just looking at whatever group you're looking at doing at that time. And so spend your first day categorizing what you can from your matches. Now I've gone and looked in every tree, and I only put a name in if I've seen a last name come up a lot of times in the trees. But some of them are not going to they're just not going to have a name that you can sit there and go, okay, yeah, I can put that one in. It's going to be too much. You will have to decide your tolerance for that. So, and then when you categorize them, you can just figure out which line you want to work on, which name you want to work on, however you've categorized it. And like I said, start with those common ancestors, and then make sure you're very careful about what you accept as part of your tree. It's all very interesting, and I have found that you can actually, briefly add names, or you can just put a last name as a placeholder and then come back to it later, which is handy. For example, I had a Blanco show up on my tree, and I had to sort out how he fit in with a couple of Blancos that were my matches, and I just put down, for one of his children, I just put down Blanco. That's it. I didn't put down her name or anything. And then she later, when I managed to get a hold of her, she managed to confirm that. So word of mouth, I think, is probably the best way to fill out your tree. But like I said, they're not all going to respond to you. You need to look at actual records. And if you can. And a lot of the stuff is digitized, so you can do that. Especially on Family Search, there's a lot of stuff on there digitized. I think there's room for human error, even on Family Search, so you really do have to kind of be careful with what you're adding to your tree, and double check things if you can, wherever you can. Sometimes you just have to take what's there, because you can't find backup records. For me, the big thing is trying to reach cousins and stuff. Other people are more into going into the background of their family more than I am. And I can understand that. But it does get, I've noticed it does get harder to verify things the further back you go. The records get messier for mom's tree. Around the 1800s, things start getting messy. 1700s, things start getting messy. It's not just, oh, they're from Scotland, I can't reach the record. They're from Scotland and were married 5 times. Wait a minute, something's not right about this. I haven't read into that one, but I'm just saying, those records start getting messier and messier as you go further back, so it gets harder. And on the Puerto Rican side, that messiness starts around 1800. So the Puerto Rican records are just really difficult to work with. All right, so I think I've given you about everything that I can on the subject. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. But for now, I'm going to go and finish this all up off camera. Woo, go me. And hopefully it will last. It looks like it's working on lasting. So we shall see. It's still a bit of a mess. But we shall see. So I will be back in about, let's shake for you, 2 shakes for you. But it's going to probably be another half hour for me. Maybe 20 minutes if I'm lucky. Got to do the hair too, you know. So I'll be back and we'll see you in just a minute. And we're back, and this is the look like I showed you at the beginning. I'm actually really surprised it's not falling apart as badly as they usually do. I'm still not too sure about how I feel about it, but there it is. The Luna Magic is on the lid. The other 2 palettes are everything on the outside. I did try to limit my use of the Luna Magic one because Melissa did ask for the 2 Nomad palettes as the main base, and so that's what I tried to make the main base. I've used a couple of new things like this Alamar. You pull her out, she's beautiful. I think it's gorgeous, this Alamar highlighter. It's gorgeous, and I love this glow. It's beautiful and buildable. I did use this Basic Beauty that came in one of my boxes. I think that hasn't been uploaded yet. It's going to be, I have it sitting, waiting for me to edit and put up. We're waiting back on the computer. This is a Basic Beauty blush palette, and oh boy, these are pigmented. I had to do a lot of toning down with powder, and yeah, just, it was, I wasn't expecting it to be that pigmented. It was a lot, guys. This is one you have to be careful with. Clown face. Clown face. Anyways, as for the Ancestry stuff, if you have other tips that I could use or that somebody else who may be watching this might be interested in using in the future, go ahead and tell us down below. We'd love to hear it. Like I said, I've only been doing this for a few months, and for the first week and a half to 2 weeks, I was on my own and frustrated. And then the DNA Angels, who I absolutely highly recommend if you are struggling with your family tree and just can't seem to get to a birth parent or to where you want to get with your family, I highly recommend talking to them. You'll have to go to their screening room where they'll have to do all the process that I mentioned earlier. But I am just really thankful for Tara and for the work that she has done on my tree and for getting me in contact with my cousins. I now have a bevy of cousins, which we will talk about in a future Dragon Bite. Now that I'm on my own with it, I'm trying to be much more careful about it. It is, it's challenging. I don't mind challenges. Some people might mind challenges. It can't get very frustrating, like all the Carmens is very frustrating right now. There are a lot of Carmens, and I can see a lot of people just backing off the way some of them seem to have done and aren't responding. Or maybe they're just not, like I said earlier, maybe they're just not into it to find family. You can go forward to a degree. There's just like, there seems to be this sweet spot in the middle of present and around 17 or 1800 where you can build your tree fairly easily, as long as you're being careful and not accepting every single hint. If you have done that, you may want to go ahead and delete some things and start reworking them and paying attention to those particular to the things that I've mentioned. You know, the birth certificates. He's a noisy cook, but we love him, right? Right? You all want to know what he's cooking. Just at any rate, you may want to just, you know, consider starting over and doing a more cautious approach, because like I said, everything on Ancestry seems to be a conglomeration of what people have accepted regardless. So you will have different names, different birth years, different locations, different children, different spouses. So you need to really pay attention to dates and look for the records to verify. Make sure it's the right, you know, like in my case, you know, my father. Make sure it's the right Arnaldo Caballero Estrada, because there could be another one out there. And, you know, apparently he had children from 3 different women, 2 of them his wives. And it's really hard to figure all that out sometimes when you've got so much going into it. I do find that it is a little less, it is both more and less messy the further back you go. It is more messy because of the condition of the records. There are some records that I've seen that are practically illegible. I can't read them. And then there are some records that are there's records that are missing, and then there are some records that are, they just don't match up with what you need to match up. So it's much easier if you can actually try to read them. For a lot of them, since I don't read Spanish, for a lot of them I'm just looking for names and dates. I can get names and dates. I can't read much else. I know a nacimiento is a birth certificate, stuff like that. I can figure out basics like that. I'm trying to get back into my Spanish now that I've got a big Spanish family. Yeah, you want to just kind of be careful and just really pay attention to the records. If there's no record attached, or it says the information in this was partially picked up by an AI and is subject to errors, I would also ignore those hints, because there are errors. There are errors. It's a process, and it does take work, and I do understand that a lot of people are going to be like, nah, I'm just going to throw everything in there. But that just makes it harder on the rest of us trying to sort it out, unfortunately. But anyway, I've really been enjoying it. I just wanted, for anybody who was interested in doing the DNA test and, you know, were trying or had done the DNA test but were possibly intimidated by the process of building your tree, just go for it. Just do it. Just do it. It's been worth it. It really has been worth it. And you can just start with the minimal monthly subscription, which was, for me, was $25. And if you know, you'll have to decide if it's worth it to you to go to your international ancestors. I've decided at this point I'm not going to do that until I have enough of them to worry about. Right now I have 1 person in Scotland and 1 person in England. I am not going to spend $15 more a month for 2 people. I'm going to keep building up, and if I get some more that are coming out, and which is almost guaranteed, because, you know, Puerto Rico was pretty much invaded by Spain, so eventually I'm going to be going to Spain and possibly Portugal and a few other places, but I want to get enough people in there before I do that. I don't want to be spending that kind of money too early in the game. At any rate, that is it for the day, and I hope you like what you've seen. And if you do like what you've seen, I hope you will subscribe if you haven't yet. When you subscribe, please hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. I currently upload 2 days a week when my computer isn't being a punk. I'm supposed to be back soon. I'm trying to have some built up for it. But when it is behaving well, we do try to have 2 videos a week, but we also have bonus videos. My son opens his My Geek box, which is also a video that is sitting on my phone, waiting for me to transfer it to edit. It's sitting there. But we do have last month's Geek box sitting there. Promise. So he opens that once a month. We've been doing our garden videos. I have a garden video on my phone that also I'm waiting to upload. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it yet because the garden, it's been 2 weeks and the garden has changed significantly since then. It's kind of why we have the backlighting, which I think I would have mentioned in a previous video. And if you send anything, don't have to, but if you do, that can also be opened here on the channel. Just let me know if you don't want me to. Put a note in your box. Or you can join the domytriesthis Facebook group, which is listed right down below. And you can let me know on there that a package is on the way. And you do not want to be embarrassed by me opening it on the channel. And I will honor your request. If you're part of my notification squad, please check both your bell and your subscription to make sure you are still there, because apparently YouTube is still doing that. I haven't noticed a subscriber change, but I don't know. It's possible. Somebody slipped by and I didn't realize it, so just double check. And if you choose not to subscribe, well, then I would be sad and disappointed. I really would. I would. But I know there's a lot of YouTube out there. So, if you don't want to help an old dragon out, I still encourage you to come back again. And when you do come back again, don't forget to bring your cup of tea. All right, so usual disclaimer, because we have not been sitting here for 30 minutes while this has steeped, it's probably not as strong as it would be normally. It did reach full by the time we got done with our intro, but let's go ahead and give her a taste and see if my opinion from 10 minutes ago has changed. Okay, now we're getting more flavor. Definitely. I think the extra time definitely helped. I'm getting the turmeric. That is really odd. Ginger is the first on the ingredients list, which means it should be the strongest. But it's honestly, it's present, but it's not present. Ginger is a spicy root, and I am not getting hit with that spiciness. I'm just getting a bit of the flavor, and that's neat. I actually really like this. Thank you, Melissa, for getting us on the right start. I'm liking this. I'm going to have to look this one up and see where to pick it up. I'm liking this a lot. Alrighty, so that is it for the day, and I hope you